This story begins with a breakup and a heartbreak. So, it all started on the final day of the university fest. A girl named Ruo was receiving an award for her unique ideas, and the crowd was cheering for her. But just as she was basking in the applause, a classmate, Lu Xing, suddenly walked onto the stage and proposed to her. The cheers got even louder until Ruo swiftly rejected him. And just like that, we fast forward to the present. Now, Ruo is the host and producer of a big dating reality show. Her manager, Min, suggests they should start scouting handsome men for the show. But Ruo, lost in thought, realizes it has been 6 years since she rejected Lu Xing's proposal, and she's still single. Min snaps her back to reality, and they soon spot a pilot they want for the show. But the pilot, thinking they're scammers, shoos them away. Just when they're about to give up, Min notices another handsome guy. Ruo doesn't see his face but follows him, only to find him sitting with his face hidden behind a magazine. She approaches him, pitches her show, and invites him to participate. But the moment he lowers the magazine, it's none other than Lu Xing. And just like that, her heartbeat goes into overdrive. Ming arrives just in time to witness their awkward reunion. Lu Xing wastes no time in throwing a question at Ruo. Wasn't she supposed to be a documentary writer? So why is she running a dating show? Ruo fires back. Wasn't he supposed to be an actor? Why is running a resort? Min, watching this verbal ping pong, immediately senses these two have some serious history. Just then, Ruo's phone rings. It's her friend Zhou, reminding her to hurry up because she's a bridesmaid. Ruo tells Min she has to leave, books a taxi, and rushes out. But Lu Xing offers her a ride since he's also attending the same event as the groom's best man. She refuses, but when her taxi gets delayed, she reluctantly hops into his car, while missing the ceremony would be worse than being stuck with an ex. On the way, they get stuck in traffic. To make things even worse, Lu Xing receives a call from a girl, telling him to finish work quickly and come home soon. Ruo immediately assumes he's in a relationship and she's not thrilled about it. Meanwhile, Lu Xing notices Ruo's feet are injured from her heels. Eventually, they arrive at the venue where Lu Xing offers Ruo the shoes. She turns it down with a sassy remark that she doesn't wear things already used by other women. At the ceremony, Zhou watches an old video of Lu Xing's proposal to Ruo. But plot twist, this isn't a wedding, it's a divorce ceremony. Zhou explains in her speech that her marriage was toxic, so she's celebrating the breakup in style. Her ex Shu bitterly adds that he paid for all the expenses. They exchange unvows, officially breaking up. Just then, Lu Xing and Ruo enter together, shocking everyone. After all, their breakup was a big deal. Turns out, 6 years ago, after initially rejecting him, Ruo had accepted Lu Xing's proposal only for them to break up later. Zhou sums up the mood with one line: even the most perfect relationships can fall apart. And to release their pent-up emotions, everyone starts a playful pillow fight. And yes, even Lu Xing and Ruo. Sometime later, Ruo is being interviewed for her reality show. When asked if she ever contacted her ex after the breakup, she gets emotional, recalling how they had said the most hurtful things to each other. When she finally called to make amends, he never answered. Cut to Lu Xing. When he's asked the same question, he reveals he never got a chance to reach out because his ex had blocked him. Then comes the big question: how did they meet at the airport? Lu Xing confesses that when they were together, they had registered their flight IDs on the same phone. So every time Ruo booked a flight, he would get a notification. When he saw she was coming to his city, he couldn't stop himself from meeting her. And just like that, the story flashes back 10 years to when they first met. High school student Lu Xing came home one day to find a girl in white with lighter in the dark. Shocked, he yelled at her, asking why she was smoking in his house. The girl was none other than Ruo, who calmly replied that she was simply lighting incense for her own grave. Lu Xing was shocked and he started shooing her away. Just then, Lu Xing's mom arrived and scolded him for being rude. She explained that Ruo was the daughter of their family friends, born on the same day as Lu Xing, and that she would be living with them from now on. Annoyed, Lu Xing stomped off to his room, completely unaware that this girl would change his life forever. The scene shifts to the present, where everyone at Ru's company is watching her old proposal video. Her colleagues tease her about it, but she brushes them off, telling them to focus on finding guests for their show. Just then, her colleague walks in and announces that they've already found one. Curious, Ruo goes to check, only to be utterly shocked when she sees that the guest is none other than Lu Xing. Without wasting a second, she storms into her office. Her boss follows her and explains that their investors specifically want both her and Lu Xing to do the show together. Ruo refuses outright, but with no investment alternatives, she has no choice but to agree. Swallowing her pride, she goes to talk to Lu Xing. She explains what he would have to do, but he raises an eyebrow and asks, And what exactly do I get out of this? She tells him that his resort will get excellent publicity since the show will be filmed there. Lu Xing smirks and says, "Wow, you're so professional. You even dragged your ex and your past into this." Ruo had been smiling a moment ago, but now she calmly responds, "Everyone has to face breakups and move on." But Lu Xing just shrugs and says he only came here to refuse the proposal. He walks away and his lawyer meets him outside. She has just arrived from the airport and is adjusting something on his face. Coincidentally, Ruo sees them together and immediately recalls how she had overheard a girl calling him in the car. And just like that, she's convinced that Lu Xing is dating someone. Meanwhile, Lu Xing is deep in thought when Shu approaches him and asks after the meeting. Lu Xing shrugs it off. Zhou and her friend Ruby are chatting about family dreams when Ruo suddenly shows up, and she was on the phone asking for information on Lu Xing's dating life. During dinner, Ruo casually mentions that they invited Lu Xing as a guest, but he declines. Her friends are thrilled, but Ruo insists that they need him for the show, though it doesn't matter since he's dating Jai, his lawyer. Zhou laughs and says that she's just his legal advisor, and tells her there's nothing between them, but Ruo refuses to believe it. Just then, Lu Xing's mother calls Ruo and tells her to come home. Zhou suggests she should go as she thought maybe his mother can help. So Ruo heads to Auntie Pei's house where she first meets Uncle Lu, who's off on a fishing trip. She greets him before stepping inside where nostalgia hits her hard. She spots an old piano. Suddenly, P storms in, fuming. "You've been back for 2 years and this is the first time you're visiting me? If I hadn't seen Shu's divorce video, I wouldn't have even known." Ruo apologizes, and after some persuasion, P finally softens and insists that Ruo stay over. Ruo hesitates, but P pulls a guilt trip, saying, "Lu Xing doesn't live here anymore, and I'm so alone." Feeling bad, Ruo agrees to stay for the night. Soon, the two are watching TV and snacking on fruit. Ruo talks about her show, and P casually suggests, "Why not make Lu Xing a guest?" Ruo sighs because participants must be single. Right then, Lu Xing enters, overhearing their conversation. P grins and says, "Oh, but he is single. Ever since your breakup, he's only focused on his resort." Lu Xing smirks. "Not exactly." The room falls silent. Ruo looks at him suspiciously. "What are you even doing here?" she asks. Lu Xing casually pulls out his phone and shows her the emergency text. P looks guilty. She's the one who sent it. Trying to dodge the awkwardness, she pretends to be drunk and insists that Lu Xing drop Ruo home. Both of them protest, but P is relentless. Lu Xing mutters she can take a bus. But as always happens in the drama, the two of them were in the car, and in the back seat, Ruo once again noticed the same pair of shoes. It seemed those shoes had a habit of showing up at just the wrong moments. As they reached home, Yu's call interrupted them. With a playful tone, he asked Ruo if she missed him. Without wasting a second, she hung up, leaving no room for unnecessary drama. Lu Xing couldn't help but comment on how close they still seemed. Ruo immediately dismissed the idea, saying they were just friends and suggesting Lu Xing should focus on his own relationship. To this, Lu Xing, with all the confidence of a man who didn't have much to lose, announced that he was single. Ruo, however, wasn't buying it. She looked at the shoes again, as if they held the answer to life's biggest mysteries, and told him he should probably ask their owner whether they were okay with him parading around as the ultimate bachelor. Just as she stepped outside, Lu Xing followed, holding the shoes, and he helped her put them on. This led to a flashback, 8 months ago, post-breakup. Ruo was on a video call with Auntie P when Lu Xing noticed those very shoes in the shoe rack. Suspicious, he asked whose they were. His mother, clearly enjoying the moment, deliberately pointed at Ruo and said, "Hers." That was all the confirmation he needed. Determined to rid himself of the past, Lu Xing grabbed the shoes and marched outside, declaring that he was going to throw them away. Back to the present, Ruo questioned whether he had actually done it. He admitted that he hadn't. He wanted to keep them as a reminder of his mistakes. Now, though, he declared that they had returned to their rightful owner. As he walked away, she stopped him, which, for a brief moment, made him happy. But when the conversation shifted to business matters, his smile vanished faster than a Wi-Fi signal during a crucial video call. She even showed him a proposal, explaining how profitable it would be. Lu Xing, however, looked as interested. Instead, he asked if this whole plan involved bringing exes back together. Ruo clarified that there was no pressure, just an opportunity to understand the past. Despite pretending not to care, Lu Xing said he would consider it, and left. Ruo too picked up her sandals and headed home. Meanwhile, Lu Xing was working on plants when Shu arrived, immediately sensing something was off. He asked what had happened, but Lu Xing wasn't in the mood to share. Shu then got straight to the point. Did he really not want to get back with Ruo? After a moment of hesitation, Lu Xing admitted that he did, but she didn't. She was only interested in business discussions, not romantic reconciliations. Xu told him to take the first step. Lu Xing considered it, but worried that Ruo might see it as too aggressive. He figured it was better to just keep things normal and continue talking as friends. Xu simply told him to do whatever he wanted and left. Later, during the interview, Ruo was asked if she had ever tried to find out about her ex. She casually replied that her friends kept her updated, so there was never really a need. Then, Lu Xing was questioned about whether he had gone to Ruo's company just to reject a contract. He got a bit sentimental, recalling the time when Ruo's boss Jiang had called him about joining a romance show. Lu Xing had wondered why Ruo hadn't called him directly. Jiang explained that Ruo was just being her usual stubborn self. Lu Xing then asked if everyone just wanted to see them argue. Jiang clarified that the audience loved seeing exes reconnect. It gave them nostalgia, and who knew, maybe even a reunion. Hearing this, Lu Xing suddenly found the idea appealing and thought this way they could reunite. In a burst of enthusiasm, he got himself a new suit and prepared to meet Ruo, though he was so nervous and started recalling the school days. How Ruo always never goes to school from his car, because she didn't want anyone at school to gossip about her. And Lu Xing, teasing her, said that he wanted the same thing. Meanwhile, Ruo was scrolling through Lu Xing's profile when Joe walked in and asked if she seriously wanted him on the show. If she weren't the producer, would she still have invited him? Ruo admitted that she wouldn't have, since they had completely different ways of thinking and couldn't work together. Joe, satisfied, left with a smug smile. Ruo then texted Jiang, telling him to find a different guest, but Jiang, in the middle of dinner, brushed it off, saying they'd discuss it later because he was actually at hospital and he accidentally mentioned a diagnosis. Ruo immediately looked it up and diagnosed him with stomach bleeding after drinking. Concerned, she rushed to the hospital, only to find him hooked up to IV fluids. She asked what had possessed him to drink so much. After a bit of prodding, Jiang finally admitted that an investor wanted to cut $6 million from their budget. This left Ruo speechless. She pointed out that they had planned everything based on that budget, and if it was reduced now, the whole project would collapse. But Jiang explained that this was exactly why he had drunk so much, to negotiate with the investor. Ready to go back for round 2, he tried to get up, but Ruo, exasperated, told him not to even think about it. Then she revealed that her mother had left her a house in town. They could sell it and use the money for the project. And just like that, their problems had shifted from complicated relationships to complicated finances. Jiang also suggested selling his house, but she refused and insisted on using her own house. Eventually, Jiang had no choice but to agree. Upon reaching home, she checked her laptop, where she found old photos from the time she was dating Lu Xing. On the other hand, Lu Xing was also looking at photos and videos on his phone, reminiscing about their past moments together. As they recalled those memories, tears welled up in their eyes. The next day, Lu Xing was cutting plants when Jiang arrived. They sat down and talked, and Jiang again invited Lu Xing to join as a guest. Lu Xing said he liked the proposal. But before he could say anything more, Jiang interrupted and revealed that he and Ruo were selling their house for investment purposes to ensure the show's success. Hearing this, Lu Xing was shocked that Ru was selling her house. He asked how much investment was required. Also, he would inform them later about his decision to become a guest. Jiang left after this conversation. Lu Xing was now with Xu, who asked him why he was being so favorable today and what he wanted. Lu Xing brought up the investment matter, but Xu directly refused, saying that Lu Xing was acting crazy in love. Lu Xing reminded Xu that he had joined the show to promote their resort publicly, like Xu said. Annoyed, Xu clarified that he had only asked Lu Xing to go alone, not to involve the entire resort. He warned Lu Xing about the potential losses. However, Lu Xing explained that he had done thorough research and presented the analyzed data to Xu. After listening, Xu agreed that it was a good decision. Lu Xing also read out the contract to him, and in the end, Xu accepted the proposal. Finally, Ru came to meet Lu Xing, assuming he would talk about being a guest, but he instead mentioned investment in the show. Ru was shocked and pointed out the risks, asking if he was acting impulsively. Lu Xing reassured her that he had reviewed the entire contract and gathered information about her colleagues, who were the best in their fields, ensuring the show's success. Hearing this, Ru apologized for doubting him. Lu Xing then stated his condition that he would choose the resort's guests. Ru agreed as long as it didn't affect the show. She then asked him about the interest rate, to which Lu Xing replied that they would stick to their previous percentage. She recalled that it was 8% and they finalized the deal. Outside, Ru met Zai and she was not happy. They talked casually and Ru told Xu that she would soon send another good proposal to avoid any problems. Xu agreed. Later, they were waiting for an investment supervisor from the Kang company who was taking a long time to arrive. When he finally showed up, it turned out that he knew them. His name is Yu, who greeted Ru first, but Lu Xing became furious upon seeing him. The supervisor then greeted Jai, who recalled that they had met before in a show, though he didn't remember it clearly. He admitted that his focus in that show had only been on Ru. Lastly, he greeted Lu Xing and asked if he remembered him, to which Lu Xing angrily replied that he could never forget him. Yu then invited Ru to lunch, but she suggested having lunch with everyone instead. During lunch, Yu asked Rao what she had been discussing with Lu Xing regarding guests. She explained that Lu Xing was the guest for their show. Shocked, Yu reminded her of how much Lu Xing had tormented her during their breakup. Ru recalled how, after their breakup, she had locked herself in a room, watching TV all day. Yu had forcefully taken her outside for a meal and he comforted her. Crying, she had replied that it felt like a part of her body had been cut away. Yu had then encouraged her to forget everything and live a good life. Back to the present, Yu told her she couldn't accept Lu Xing as a guest. Lu Xing overheard this and became even angrier. Yu deliberately ordered dishes that would provoke Lu Xing. He commented that Lu Xing used to punch people, and now there was even a punch lemon tea on the menu. Yu again mocks Lu Xing how he had once assumed something was going on between him and Rao. In a fit of rage, he even had come to fight him. On this comment, both were then staring at each other. Seeing this tense situation, Zai suggested ordering signature dishes instead. Shu agreed and placed the order. Yu then mentioned that he wanted to invest in the show. However, Ru declined, stating that they already had an investor, Lu Xing. Hearing this, Yu was once again shocked and accused Lu Xing of manipulating the situation. He claimed that Lu Xing had proposed during the show to pressure Ru into accepting his proposal and was now trying to do the same. Ru denied this, explaining that her company needed Lu Xing help. However, Yu didn't understand and accused Ru of refusing his investment while accepting Lu Xing's. He questioned how she could work with him. Ru explained that the deal was beneficial for both parties. Still, Yu insisted that Rio should not work with Lu Xing and should find a stable investment instead. Frustrated, Lu Xing left for the restroom and Yu followed him. Again in the interview, Ru was asked about an odd rule that she and her ex were following. She recalled their high school when she was tutoring Lu Xing, but he told her not to take it too seriously and simply inform his mother that she had tutored him. She had easily agreed. Lu Xing had then asked if she needed anything and she had requested money for a meal card. He had asked why her parents didn't support her financially. She had explained that her mother had passed away and she didn't want to use her father's money. Lu Xing had sent her the money and she had promised to return it with 8% of interest once she received her scholarship. However, Lu Xing had refused, asking her to tutor him instead. Lu Xing was also asked if he had given her money to get close to her. He responded that he had only wanted to help her as a friend. However, with a smile, he said, if this investment was bringing them closer, then there was nothing he could do about it. Back to the high school days where Shu and Lu Xing are discussing their exams. Shu says that he probably won't pass this time. Lu Xing teases him, to which Shu responds by mentioning a new student in their class, Ruo, who has excellent scores. He plans to impress her and get the answers from her. Shu then approaches Ruo to talk, but she doesn't even look at him. A little later, another student comes up to Ruo and starts talking to her, asking if her previous school was not good enough that she transferred here and if she would like to be his friend. Ruo tells him to be quiet because she is studying. Since she ignores him, he gets frustrated and is about to say something when Lu Xing suddenly gets up from his desk and shouts at him to be quiet because he is trying to sleep. The boy then calms down. During the exam, the same boy deliberately breaks Ruo's pencil, which Lu Xing notices, so he gives her his pencil. Back to the present, where Lu Xing is in the washroom and Yu follows him to ask if he has told Ruo the truth. Actually, Lu Xing's resort has an agreement with Yu's company that he needs to make a profit because the resort has been running at a loss. Lu Xing responds that he is aware, but there is still time for the contract to be completed. Besides, their resort is doing well now and the agreement will also be fulfilled. Yu comments that Lu Xing has become wiser than before, especially since his time with Ruo. Lu Xing, looking annoyed, asks if he knows everything about his relationship with Ruo. Yu confirms that he does because he has been with Ruo all these years, whereas Lu Xing is part of her past. The two then go to a table where Yu tells Ruo that a TV director is interested in her show and that he has several clients who would like to invest financially since she has to manage an entire team. Ruo again refuses him and somehow they manage to finish lunch. After stepping outside, Ruo stops Yu and tells him that he shouldn't have brought up the past because things had already become too complicated. Annoyed, Yu responds that he doesn't like Lu Xing at all and then walks away. Meanwhile, when Lu Xing is back at home, he starts cutting grass when Shu approaches him and asks if he is angry again. He wonders whether Ruo will accept Yu's offer. Lu Xing replies that the offer is good and that if he were in her place, he would choose it too. He also mentions that he never forced her because of love. However, observing Lu Xing's expression while he continues cutting grass, Shu remarks that no matter what he says, it is clear that he is furious. Later, Lu Xing is pacing in his office, waiting for Ruo. Shu arrives, and for a moment, Lu Xing thinks it is Ruo, making him tense. But upon seeing Shu, he relaxes. Shu tells him that Ruo was supposed to arrive, but still hasn't, wondering if she has accepted Yu's offer. Lu Xing dismisses the thought, saying that she would come and inform him if that were the case. Just then, Ruo arrives, making Lu Xing happy. She explains that she was stuck in traffic. Since they are all going to work together, Lu Xing asks why she refused Yu's offer. Ruo explains that their news is trending and they should take advantage of it. Shu also attempts to sit with them, but Lu Xing sends him outside to work. Ruo then mentions that she spoke with the investors Yu had recommended, but since they don't know each other well, building trust will take time, so she refuses them. Plus, regardless of their personal relationship, they will never break each other's trust or let their business suffer a loss. Hearing this, Lu Xing is pleased and they shake hands. Ruo then discusses the future plan. She also suggests inviting divorced couples to the show, to which Lu Xing smiles and comments that they are both thinking about the same people. Meanwhile, Shu is in his room, looking at his phone. He recalls that he and Zhou had promised to remain friends even after the divorce, but wonders why she isn't responding to his texts. Just then, Lu Xing arrives and asks Shu to participate in the Go Back Lover program, but Shu refuses. On the other side, Ru goes to meet Zhu and tells her that Shu has sent her to apologize for his past mistakes and has promised to focus only on her now, rather than on games and friends. Hearing this, Zhu is slightly pleased. At the same time, Lu Xing tells Shu that Zhu has sent him to apologize for her past tantrums and promises not to repeat them. Shu is happy about this, and in the end, both agree to participate in the show. Lu Xing and Ruo were happy because they succeeded in this plan. Next day, Ruo went to Lu Xing's office where he showed her a photo of Xin. He suggests inviting him to the show for publicity, and Ruo likes the idea. She gives him a diary and asks him to send Xin's contact information before leaving. Later, Ruo shares the guest list for their show with the team, and they realize that all the guests they have selected are from the same class. They wonder if this will look good, but Ruo suggests portraying it as a nostalgic journey so that people can relive their high school memories. Meanwhile, Lu Xing, Shu, and Xin are sitting together after playing basketball. Lu Xing asks Xin if he will join the show, but he refuses because he doesn't like socializing, which is why he became a book writer. Lu Xing reassures him that it won't be a problem, but Xin insists that he doesn't have a girlfriend or love life. So this will only make it a dull experience for the audience in the dating show. Shu jokingly suggests that Xin should bring his books as they are his true love, leaving both Xin and Lu Xing speechless. Lu Xing does not force him further. However, Shu continues persuading Xin to consider the book idea. While Zhou, Ruby, and Ruo are together, Ruo mentions that she wants to invite Xin to the show. Zhuo excitedly asks if Xin is really coming, and Ruby seems a bit shy upon hearing his name. Ruo explains that Xin has no love life, so he doesn't want to participate. Zhou teases Ruby, making Ruo curious about her reaction. Zhou then reveals that Xin always met Ruby after class, implying there was something between them. Recalling their high school days, Ruby shares that Xin had once come to collect her Chinese paper and praised her for writing so well, which made her a little shy. Recalling this memory, Ruby admits that they met several times after that, but only to discuss homework. However, Zhuo refuses to believe this. Ruo suggests inviting both of them to the show, but Rubo refuses, saying that Xin has become highly successful while she has just gone through a divorce, which would not be appropriate. Hearing this, Ruo and Zhou remain silent. Ruo asks if her ex-husband is bothering her, but Ruby assures her that he probably isn't around. They then talk about Ruby's internship, and Ruby mentions that it will end in a week, making both Zhou and Ruo happy for her. Later, Ruby is working in her office when she receives a text from Ruo inviting her for lunch. She agrees and says she will be there. However, as she approaches the elevator, she sees Li, her husband, and becomes frightened. He grabs her hand and insists they should go home and talk. Ruby tells him that their divorce is final, but he refuses to listen. Just then, Ruo arrives, sees him behaving this way with Ruby, and pushes him away. Ru, in anger, threatens Li that if he doesn't leave, she will show the camera evidence and have him arrested. Frightened, Li quickly leaves the place. Back to the interview featuring Ruby, Ruo, and Zuo, where they are asked how they became best friends. Ruby responds that she was just an ordinary girl who didn't talk to anyone. She recalled her high school days when she was running during a pre-class session and unexpectedly got her period. Some boys noticed and tried to tease her, but Rue intervened, stopping them and giving her jacket to Ruby. Seeing this, a teacher was about to deduct her marks, but just then, Zhu arrived and stood up for them. In the present, Ruby said that from that moment, the three of them had been best friends. Later, when Rue was cleaning the classroom alone, two girls from her class gossiped behind her back, questioning why she was cleaning alone when Lu Xing was also on duty. One of them remarked that Rue probably liked Lu Xing, which was why he was outside playing basketball while she was doing his work as well. They left after saying this, unaware that Rue had overheard everything, which made her furious. After finishing the cleaning, Rue carried the garbage bag to the basketball ground and confronted Lu Xing, reminding him that he was supposed to help clean the class that morning. He casually replied that he would do things in his own time. In response, Rue emptied the garbage onto the ground and told him to sweep it up, making everyone present laugh at them. Lu Xing had no choice but to sweep the trash. Back to the present, Ruby, now at Rue's house, was so terrified that she flinched, even when Rue placed a glass beside her. As Rue comforted her, she noticed a bruise on Ruby's neck and was shocked. Ruby then revealed that sometimes Lee lost control and hit her. Rue asked why she hadn't reported him, to which Ruby explained that they came from a small town where people constantly ran into each other. She feared that if she took any action, Lee might harm her parents. She added that since she was now in Shenzhen, he might not trouble her anymore. Rue then insisted that Ruby stay with her, and she agreed. The next day, Rue and her director, along with the staff, visited Lu Xing's resort to scout locations for their show. As Lu Xing showed them around, Rue suggested various changes, such as modifications to the furniture and lighting. Meanwhile, at home, Ruby was packing when she found her old high school book. Upon opening it, she saw a note written by Xin. It said, "If you believe in something, you can achieve it." This brought back memories of her high school days when Xin had given her a gift on Girls' Day, which made her extremely happy. Back in the present, Ruby heard a knock on the door. She quickly placed the book in her luggage and checked who it was. She saw Lee standing outside. Angrily, she shouted at him, demanding to know why he was there. He asked her to open the door, but she refused. He then started banging on it loudly, scaring her. She saw him walking away and was about to call for help when suddenly he entered through the back window. As soon as he stepped inside, he started apologizing, promising never to hit her again. He grabbed her hand and forced her to hit him, insisting that she should retaliate. Ruby refused and told him to leave, reminding him that they were divorced. As she desperately tried to call Rao, he started yelling at her. Rue picked up her call, hearing everything over the phone, immediately left for Ruby's place with Lu Xing. On the way, they ran into Shu and Xin, who joined them. At Ruby's house, he asked her if she really wanted him to leave. Frightened, Ruby nodded. Furious, Lee ripped her clothes and tore apart the book Xin had given her. Seeing this, Ruby fought back, but he overpowered her, tore her top, and dragged her outside. Just then, Rue and the others arrived. Rue, in tears, immediately covered Ruby with her jacket and hugged her tightly. Seeing them, Lee panicked and escaped through the window. Xin was shocked to see Ruby in such a state. Rue sent everyone outside while Ruby, for the first time, thanked her. She said no one had ever come to rescue her before. Rue hugged her tightly, feeling heartbroken at her condition. Lu Xing arranged a room for Ruby at his resort. Xin offered to carry Ruby's luggage to the room, but Rue refused. Once inside, Rue applied medicine to Ruby's bruises. Ruby then insisted that Rue return to work. Though Rue agreed and left, she felt deeply sad seeing Ruby in such a state. As soon as Rue left, Ruby broke down in tears and pulled out a small, torn page from her pocket. It was a piece of the book Xin had gifted her with the same motivational quote. Outside, Rue ran into Xin, who asked her if they were really going to let Lee get away with everything. Rue firmly replied that they would not. The next day, Rue and Ruby met at a cafe, where Ruby thanked her for everything. Rue urged her to file a complaint against Lee, but Ruby refused, explaining that he knew all her family members and relatives. She didn't want to put them in danger. Rue then took her to a small alley where Lu Xing and their friends confronted Lee. They warned him to stay away from Ruby, but he arrogantly claimed that Ruby was his wife, and their issues were none of their business. In anger, Shu slapped him, questioning how domestic violence could be considered a normal part of marriage. Furious, Lee shouted that Ruby was his wife and he could do whatever he wanted with her. He insisted that she didn't deserve to work and that he would never let her go. Rue pointed this out to her, that Lee had no intention of leaving Ruby alone. Finally, Ruby asked what she should do. Rue told her that just as she had her concerns, Lee had his own motives. Rue then took Ruby to Lee and she firmly declared that she was filing a complaint against him. Enraged, Lee attempted to hit her again, but the others stopped him. She then presented evidence of his domestic violence and harassment. She reminded Lee that Shu held a high position in his company. If news of his actions got out, he would be fired immediately. Now, Lee had a choice, and he agreed to the first condition and left. Ruby then thanked everyone. Zhou praised her for handling the situation so well. Ruby admitted that she had thought about taking a stand many times whenever Lee hit her, but she could only do it today because of their support. At that moment, Zhou asked Shin why he was there. Looking at Ruby, he said he wanted to help her. Hearing that Zhou wanted to tease him, but Ruby stopped her. So Shu and Zhou started arguing again, and she playfully chased Shu to hit him. Ru commented that these two would never change and then turned to Lu Xing, saying that he had changed because he didn't raise his hand against Li. Lu Xing replied that earlier they would report things to their teacher, but now if they took any action, they'd have to report it to the police. He added that his brain had redeveloped. With that, everyone left. The next day, Ruby was working in the office when she received a message from Shin, asking if she could meet him at his company. She thought for a moment before deciding. The scene then shifted to an interview where Shin was asked why he had joined the show. Shin replied that he wanted to relive old memories with his friends. When asked for another reason, he admitted that he was there for Ruby. Back in high school days, the results of their exams were announced. Everyone checked Lu Xing and Rao's marks, and Rao's score was unexpectedly low, just 1 mark below Lu Xing's. The students gossiped, wondering how she, a former school topper, had performed so poorly. Ru remained silent, but Lu Xing, angered by the whispers, shouted at them. When everyone quieted down, he approached Ru and assured her that a single exam didn't define her. He admitted that even his marks weren't great. However, Rao, responding with an arrogant tone, said that he seemed quite proud of his own marks. Lu Xing, taken aback, returned to his seat. Their teacher then arrived and explained that Rao's marks had been incorrectly recorded due to an issue with her pencil, and after revaluation, she had actually scored the highest. She was still the topper. The teacher then asked everyone to change their seats according to the new seating arrangement, which paired Ru with Lu Xing. As they sat together, Lu Xing teased her, suggesting that she had known about her real marks all along. Ru confidently replied that since she had written the answers, she knew how she had performed and didn't need to explain herself to anyone. Lu Xing then jokingly asked her to check his answer sheet too, claiming that he might be the secret topper. Smiling, Ru called the teacher over and pointed out that one of Lu Xing's answers was incorrect. The teacher confirmed the mistake, lowering Lu Xing's score. Lu Xing complained that his results had dropped even further, and they both laughed at this. In the present, Shin met Ruby and told her that he had wanted to talk to her earlier, but there had been too many people around. Shin then praised her for standing up to Lee. Ruby thanked him, saying that she had only managed to do it because of everyone's support. Shin suggested that since Lu Xing and Ru still seemed to like each other, they should help bring them together, then asked Ruby if she would join the show. Ruby hesitated. Later, Ruby went to a restaurant where Joe and Ru were waiting for her. As soon as she arrived, they asked where she had gone after work. Joe revealed that Shin had asked for Ruby's number and wondered if they had met. Ruby recalled that when Shin had asked her to join the show, she had initially refused, saying she was just an ordinary person and that no one would be interested in her. Moreover, it was a romance show. However, Shin assured her that he would tell the producer that they were in a secret romance. This made Ruby blush slightly, and she eventually agreed. Zhou and Ru were thrilled and teased her about how straightforward Shin was. Ru was also delighted that Ruby would be participating in the show. And later, Rao was heading to her office when she met Xiang, who introduced her to Zhao, the daughter of one of their clients. Xiao excitedly told Rao that she was a huge fan of her and Lu Xing and urged them to reconcile quickly. Ru, maintaining a straightforward approach, advised Zhao to focus on her internship instead, and she shouldn't concern herself with such matters. After Ru left, Zhao commented on how composed she was. The next day, Ru arrived at the resort, where renovations were underway. She noticed that despite the work having started, the necessary materials hadn't arrived. When she inquired, she was told that Zhao had insisted on beginning the work, and since she was the client's daughter, no one had been able to refuse her. Additionally, she was supposed to visit at noon to inspect the progress, but no one was available to pick up the supplies. Ru was free, so she offered to go and get them. Shortly after, Lu Xing arrived at the resort, followed by Zhao. As soon as she saw him, Zhao enthusiastically expressed how much she admired him and Ru as a couple, saying she wanted to see them together again. Lu Xing smiled at her excitement. Zhao then eagerly asked how they had originally ended up together. However, the moment Lu Xing inquired about Ro, he discovered she had gone shopping for construction materials, probably haggling her way into an award for best negotiator. He was all set to rush to her rescue, but Zhao blocked his way. When he cheekily asked if she didn't want to see them together, she finally gave in, probably realizing she couldn't argue with his selective logic. Meanwhile, Ru was in full-on bargain mode at a shop, trying to convince the owner to lower the price. The shopkeeper, clearly unfazed, jokingly asked if this was for her wedding house. Not one to miss a dramatic opportunity, Ru nodded, immediately launching into an Oscar-worthy performance about how her strict husband had given her a painfully small budget. Just as the shopkeeper was processing this revelation, in walked Lu Xing. The shopkeeper took one look at him and without hesitation assumed he was the husband. As if that weren't enough, Ru sealed the deal by calling him honey. Lu Xing, clearly enjoying this plot twist, embraced the role wholeheartedly. Ru then turned to him with a grave expression and declared that if they couldn't get a discount, they'd have to halt the renovation. Lu Xing, in perfect sync, nodded solemnly. The shopkeeper, feeling the weight of their struggles, finally lowered the price. However, Lu Xing got a little too comfortable in his new role and tried to touch Ru, who promptly shut that down like a government office on a public holiday. After their dramatic success, Ru turned to Lu Xing and demanded to know why he had shown up. He announced that he had come to help her, and he declared that their fake couple act had been fantastic. So fantastic, in fact, that they should consider keeping it up. Ru, unimpressed, told him not to become a burden. The duo then continued their shopping adventure, with Ru once again attempting to negotiate. Lu Xing, however, decided that playing the adorable but clueless partner was the way to go. When Ru subtly signaled him to drive a harder bargain, he instead agreed to pay a higher price, completely missing the point. Ru, visibly horrified, stopped him just in time, arguing that their budget wasn't endless. If they splurged now, they'd have to survive on air and good wishes for the rest of the renovation. Lu Xing, finally grasping the concept of financial planning, admitted she had a point. In a burst of spontaneous fun, Lu Xing scooped Ru up and plopped her into a cart, announcing that since she was clearly the brains of this operation, he'd take charge of transport. With the enthusiasm of a toddler on a sugar high, he wheeled her to the next shop, earning amused smiles from onlookers. At the next stop, Ru examined various items while Lu Xing, still deep in character, continued his act as the world's most dependent boyfriend. Later, they went out to eat, where Lu Xing, still riding the high of his new role, kept calling Ru honey. Ru, who had clearly had enough, told him to drop the act. Lu Xing, unwilling to give up so easily, teased, "But weren't you happy too?" Ru insisted she was only happy because the prices had gone down, not because of anything else. Lu Xing, sensing an opportunity for nostalgia, reminded her that she once claimed he had changed. Then, with dramatic flair, he added, "Well, you've changed too." This triggered a memory of their school days, specifically a time when Ru was playing the piano while Lu Xing stood outside watching. Back in the present, Ru asked what exactly had changed. Lu Xing, after a moment of reflection, shrugged and said she wasn't important enough to remember. Ru shot back, "That's just the level of brilliance I expect from you. How many times did I have to explain one question to you and you still didn't get it?" Lu Xing, completely unfazed, grinned and said, "Wouldn't it be great if we could go back to those days? You scolding me was still better than now." Just as he was about to ask her something else, an unwelcome memory of their breakup hit him like an unexpected exam, and he suddenly went silent. Back in the interview, Zhou was asked which of the three couples was most likely to fail. Without hesitation, she picked Lu Xing, reasoning that he never actually considered what Ru wanted. He just steamrolled his opinions onto her like a bulldozer with no brakes. To drive the point home, she revealed that after their breakup, Ru had called him twice to reconcile, but he had ignored both calls. Shu, when asked the same question, decided to play the optimist, and instead of dwelling on failures, he said they should focus on success, specifically his. Back to the high school, where Lu Xing tells Ru that his mom will be going out today, so they need to eat outside. He asks her several things about what she wants to eat, but she refuses everything. In the end, he takes her for a hot pot, which is extremely spicy. Since Lu Xing didn't eat spicy food, he struggles to eat it. Ru starts saying that this isn't spicy at all and that she eats food even spicier than this. Lu Xing replies that in that case, the food his mom makes must be too bland for her. She responds that it's not like that and she can eat anything. Just then, she gets a call from her dad, which she ignores. Lu Xing tells her to answer it, but she asks him to focus on food instead. Ru notices a family where a father is giving his daughter cotton candy and playing with her. She then saw that Lu Xing walks up to the vendor and asks for one, saying that her sister is sitting nearby and she needs it for her. When the vendor refuses, Lu Xing calls out to Ro, making the vendor assume she was telling the truth. The girl then hands over the cotton candy. As Ro arrives, she accuses Lu Xing of lying, as she is not his sister. He denies it and says that since she has been staying with his family and is a little younger than him, she is basically like his sister. Saying this, he gives her the cotton candy, which makes her feel emotional, yet happy. The scene shifts to the present, where Ru asks Lu Xing what he is saying. He replies that he is still hungry and is going for another serving. Ru asks if he didn't find the food spicy, to which he says that he has started eating spicy food now. Later, they arrive at the resort, where the work has already begun. Ru shouts, "Stopping the work!" and demands to know who ordered it to start without proper safety equipment. Zhao speaks up, saying that she did that because they don't have much time left, and since her father is investing in the project, she felt it was fine. She adds that the longer they delay, the more they will have to pay the workers. Ru yells at her, questioning what would happen if there was an accident. She warns Zhao that she cannot make such reckless decisions. Hearing this, Zhao gets angry and leaves. She then calls her dad and complains that Ru is fake and not a good person, as she yelled at her in front of everyone. However, her father doesn't listen to her. Frustrated, she mutters to herself that even without her father's support, she can still create problems for Rao. That night, Rao and Lu Xing are drinking together when he asks her if she wasn't afraid while scolding Zhao, considering she was the client's daughter. Ru admits she was, but explains that if she hadn't spoken up, Zhao would have taken over by ordering everything with money. She adds that if she had stayed silent, no one would have listened to her throughout the entire show. She had experienced this at the beginning, which had caused her a lot of stress, but now she understands how to handle things. She also says that if they weren't in this situation, they would have been great friends. Lu Xing replies that they already are, but Ru insists that it's better if they remain just good friends. Hearing this, Lu Xing stays silent. Ru is later with Ruby and Zhu, where Zhu asks if she went shopping alone with Lu Xing and also drank with him. They are shocked when she nodded in agreement, and the two ask Ru what's going on. Ru simply states that they are just friends. Ruby then asks if she felt anything while being with him. Ru, a little nervous, admits that she did feel something, but assures them that everything will be fine. They then discuss the filming, mentioning that their introduction shoot will begin the next day. Ruby is nervous about being surrounded by cameras, but Ru reassures her that it won't be a big problem, unless she plans to commit a crime on camera, in which case, yes, it's a big problem. Meanwhile, Zhou worries about her looks, and whether she'll have to be in makeup all the time. The next day, Zhou's introduction shoot takes place in her cafe, where she films herself making coffee. However, after several takes, she still isn't satisfied. Apparently the coffee is photogenic, but she isn't. Ru steps in and tells her that good clips will be edited in, so she should stop overthinking. Only then does Zhou calm down, realizing that editors exist for a reason. In the next scene, Xiang wishes all the staff good luck for the shooting starting tomorrow. Ru also encourages everyone. Jiao, however, raises a concern. Since Ru is also a guest, if they report everything to her, she'll know everything about the show, which wouldn't be ideal. Lu considers this and nods solemnly, as if resisting the urge to pinky promise she won't spoil anything. Ru assures them that she will only focus on the budget and won't interfere in the show itself. The introduction of all participants follows. Lu Xing and Ru were together for 5 years and then separated for 4. Just then, Shu arrives and immediately starts promoting his resort. The others follow him, and he even pressures Xin to speak positively about the resort. However, he simply gives an okay sign. The group then sits down for a hot pot, which is being recorded. During the meal, Lu tells Lu Xing that he should only eat the spicy food if he can handle it. He responds that he's fine. Shu continues to advertise the resort, claiming that the food is good not because of the chefs, but because the vegetables are grown there. Everyone gets annoyed, and Ru warns him not to overdo the advertising. Shu stays silent, but soon, he and Zhou start fighting over a piece of meat. In their struggle, the meat falls onto Ru's lap. She recalls a similar incident happening before. Lu Xing and Ru remember a time when they went to have fun after their college entrance exams. Lu Xing had been drinking a lot, and at one point he tried to feed Ru, but ended up falling on her. When Ru went to clean up, Lu Xing followed her. As she came out of the washroom, she saw him waiting outside, and they stood there silently, looking at each other. That was when Lu Xing confessed, saying, "I like you." Zhou then reveals that Lu Xing was extremely drunk when he first proposed to Rao. Hearing this, Shu is shocked, while Rao feels awkward and excuses herself from the table. Shu takes Lu Xing to a side room and questions why he never told him about this. Lu Xing dismisses it as something from the past, but Shu insists that while the event is in the past, his feelings aren't. Lu Xing tells him to drop the subject, saying that he and Ru are just friends now. However, Shu doesn't believe him, stating that while Lu Xing might fool others, he cannot fool him. Zhou asks Rao if she felt anything. Rao, feeling a bit emotional, admits that seeing Lu Xing now reminded her of the man he was 10 years ago. But she quickly regains her composure, like a pro. Zhao then asks what she plans to do next. Ru glances at Lu Xing before casually switching off both her and Zhao's mics. She leans in and whispers something, leaving Zhao looking like she just saw a plot twist in real life. Cut to the interview, where Lu Xing is asked if he has always liked spicy food. He immediately shuts it down, confessing that he once suffered through the fire-breathing agony just to share the experience with Ruo. Ruo, upon learning this, secretly enjoys the thought of being someone's reason for self-inflicted pain. Flashback to high school, Lu Xing approaches Ruo all confident and calls her sister. Ruo immediately rejects the title, saying she is not his sister. Lu Xing reminds her that she accepted the cotton candy from him, which, in his view, makes her his sister. He also claims to have completed all his homework, asking her to check it. Ruo is skeptical, and Lu Xing then confesses that he was joking he hasn't completed it. However, he proudly states that he has learned some English idioms. Ruo still doesn't believe him, so Lu Xing insists that she test him. Ruo then asks him in English, "You are the apple of my eye," and challenges him to explain its meaning. Lu Xing tries to answer but struggles to understand. When he looks it up, he realizes it means someone cherished deeply. He turns to Ruo and asks if she genuinely meant it. Ruo simply smiles, first affirming and then teasingly telling him to figure it out himself. The story returns to the present, where the show has planned date scenarios for 3 pairs at different locations. Each pair will play a truth or lie game to determine who is being honest. As Ruo steps out of her room, she notices Shu playing a game on his phone while sitting outside. She asks him what he's doing there, and he responds that his date is in that very location. When Ruo inquires about Lu Xing, Shu informs her that he has already left. Ruo's designated location is a beachside spot. When Lu Xing arrives there, he asks about Ruo. Jiao informs him that the driver has picked her up and that she should arrive soon. In the meantime, they decide to proceed with the interview questions. Lu Xing agrees. Meanwhile, Ruby reaches her date, followed by Xin. Both seem extremely nervous and struggle to initiate a conversation. Seeing this, a staff member, annoyed by their hesitation, writes on a board, instructing them to start talking. They barely exchange a few words before falling silent again. The staff member then directs Ruby to offer Xin a bottle of water. As Xin drinks, he becomes so nervous that he starts complimenting the taste of the water. Ruby, confused, asks, "Does water even have a taste?" Yu confidently replies, "Yes, water has a slightly sweet taste," and then continues providing unnecessary details. Amused, Ruby comments, "Well, at least you got water to drink." The staff member, frustrated, wonders if they are shooting a water advertisement instead of a dating show. Meanwhile, Ruo is unexpectedly dropped off alone in a forest by the driver. Holding the camera, she starts searching for Lu Xing and the crew, but finds no one. Perplexed, she wonders why they chose such a remote location. Back at the beach, Lu Xing is being interviewed by Zhao. She asks who confessed first in his past relationship. He admits that he did. She then speculates that Ruo must have given signals first, but Lu Xing denies it. Soon, they realize that Ruo has not arrived yet. Zhao insists that the driver confirmed her drop-off nearby and that she should be there soon. In the forest, Ruo continues searching for them while marking her path. Meanwhile, Shu, still playing his game, is interrupted when Zhou arrives with bottles of alcohol. She teases him, saying he isn't promoting his resort anymore. Shu responds that his personal time isn't of interest to viewers. Curious about the alcohol, he asks what she intends to do with it so early in the day. Zhou explains that she brought it because she feared no one would be brave enough to tell the truth in the session. They both start drinking and begin asking each other questions. Zhou confesses that during their wedding, she secretly took extra money to buy herself a handbag. Shu admits that it's true. In return, he reveals that he lied about working overtime to play games. Yo confirms that she knew about it. The two then accuse each other of secretly going out for dinner with other people, leading to an argument. Their cameraman, realizing that their heated fight could overshadow the entire episode, so they decide to turn off the camera, saying their quarrel isn't worth broadcasting. Night falls, and Lu Xing, growing concerned, asks Jiao who created the location-based question game. She replies that the production team planned it. Lu Xing then asks if she sent the correct location to Ruo. Jiao insists that she did, but when Lu Xing demands to show her phone, she hesitates before finally showing him her phone. Upon checking, Lu Xing realizes that Jiao had sent the wrong location. Furious, he warns her that if anything happens to Ruo, he won't forgive her. Without wasting time, he rushes out to find her. Meanwhile, Ru, marking her path through the forest, suddenly finds her phone switching off. She continues forward in the dark. Lu Xing, following tree markings, moves in her direction. Just then, Ruo, unaware of a pit ahead, nearly falls in but manages to stop in time. She lets out a loud scream and Lu Xing hears her. Calling her name, he heads toward the sound. Hearing his voice, Ruo called back. and both rushed toward each other as if reenacting a dramatic movie scene. Just as Lu Xing was about to reach her, he confidently strode forward, only to step straight into a pit. Ruo paused for a moment and remarked on his smooth move as she pulled him to his feet. Wincing as he tried to walk, Lu Xing leaned on her for support and admitted with a sheepish grin that he had intended to play the hero and save the beauty. Amused, Ruo patted his shoulder and pointed out that, instead, he had successfully flipped the script. As they make their way back, Ruo wonders why the staff chose such a risky location. Lu Xing, now aware of Zhao's deception, informs her that Zhao deliberately sent her the wrong address to make things difficult for her. Ruo, angered, tightens her jaw but says nothing. Back at the set, as soon as they return, Zhao, visibly tense, rushes to Ruo, pretending to be concerned. She dramatically claims she was extremely worried about Ruo's safety. However, Ruo directly confronts her about sending the wrong address. Zhao, on the verge of tears, blames the driver instead, insisting he was at fault. Jiang steps in, siding with Zhao, and tells her to calm down. Ruo, saying nothing further, heads toward the food station where grilled skewers are being prepared. Picking one up, she firmly states that such mistakes should never happen again, as they could cause serious problems for the show. She then looks directly at Zhao, who for the first time seems genuinely intimidated. After all this drama, Ru thanks Lu Xing for coming to save her. They are both eating when Lu Xing suddenly feels some pain in his neck. When Ru asks about it, he explains that it's because of the cold. Lu Xing then asks for chili flakes and adds a large quantity to his food. Ru curiously asks him when and why he started eating such spicy food. Lu Xing replies that since she likes spicy food, he thought that if they were going to live together in the future, their taste preferences should match. So, like a true romantic or masochist, he started practicing eating spicy food daily. Ru gets emotional after hearing this and suggests that they start dating again. Lu Xing, caught completely off guard, asks if she is serious. She simply smiles, leaving him to question if this is real life or just reality TV messing with him. The entire staff witnesses the moment and starts praising their chemistry as if they just watched the climax of a rom-com. However, people begin to wonder, does Ru truly want to date Lu Xing again, or is this just premium content for the show? Seeing this, Zhao becomes extremely angry and storms off. Later, during the interview, the first question is directed at Ruby, asking what truth she told. She replies that when she said she didn't find Shin's words boring, she meant it. She also confirms that what he said about water was true, since he is apparently an expert in it, because that's a thing apparently. Shin is then asked what lie he thinks Ruby told, to which he replies that he doubts she really finds his words boring. Shin then explains that he was nervous, which is why he didn't speak much. Although he had prepared several topics, he ended up saying nothing when he stood in front of her. Shin wanted to appear interesting to her. Next, Shu is asked about his response, but he claims he doesn't remember all the things he was asked. The cameraman beside him says that Zhou had anticipated this and mentioned that Shu had said he went on a date with a girl. Shu quickly clarifies that this was not true. Apart from Zhou, his clients, and his mother, he doesn't go anywhere with any other girl. He adds that since he is still in Zhou's shadow, there's no reason for him to be with someone new. Zhao, who is standing outside, hears this. When Shu comes out, she asks him if what he said was true. He is about to respond, but the staff stops them, telling them to save the conversation for the next episode and take a break for now. Ru is then asked what truth she told. She confesses that when she said they should start dating again, it was purely an emotional reaction, seeing Lu Xing help her and even change his eating habits for her. However, after thinking rationally, she realized it wouldn't be right because, if they got back together, they would face the same problems again. Lu Xing is then asked what lies Ru told. He says that her suggestion to start over was false because just a few days ago, she had clearly stated that she only wanted to be friends. Ru is then asked what lie Lu Xing told, to which she replies that he didn't lie at all. She explains that he had promised never to lie to her. Lu Xing also confirms that he has never lied to her. Finally, Jia presents a question given by the director. She asks why Rao and Lu Xing broke up in the first place. Lu Xing recalls that when he had gone abroad to meet Ru, he saw a man and a woman hugging in her room. Angered by this memory, he refuses to answer the question, which pleases Jia. Later, Ru and Lu Xing head to their rooms, which are located opposite each other. They greet each other before going inside, both wanting to say something but remaining silent. The next day, Ru is instructing the staff when Yu arrives, asking her to accompany him for some shopping. She initially refuses but agrees when he mentions buying a pillow. Jia overhears this conversation. Meanwhile, Lu Xing is getting ready when Shu informs him that Rao went out with Yu. Lu Xing indifferently responds, "So what?" Just then, he receives a message from Jia asking him to accompany her for a few more shots. He agrees and leaves. At the store, Yu is checking out different pillows and asks Rao which one she prefers. She picks one for Lu Xing's neck pain. Yu comments that she is torturing herself again, to which Rao replies that she is just giving him a pillow, nothing more. Just then, a sales assistant approaches them, introducing a scented product that helps with sleep. As they are looking at it, Lu Xing and Jia arrive at the store. Jia immediately starts searching for them, and upon spotting them together, she calls out to Lu Xing while turning on the camera. Lu Xing, seeing Rao and Yu together, feels sad and starts walking toward them. Yu then jokes that Rao should have told him earlier if she wanted to buy these, as it now looks like they purchased a couple's set. However, Lu Xing only hears the last part about the couple's set, causing him to drop something in anger. Both Ru and Yu turn to look at him. Jia then chimes in, saying, "What a coincidence, we all ended up here together," and walks away. Lu Xing, still upset, says, "So you two bought a couple's set?" Yu clarifies that everything Rao bought was for Lu Xing, but he seems ungrateful. Upon hearing this, Lu Xing immediately apologizes, realizing he misunderstood the situation. Yu sarcastically comments that this isn't the first time Lu Xing has jumped to conclusions. Just then, Ru receives a phone call, and Yu takes the opportunity to declare, "I've loved Ru for a long time and I'll officially pursue her soon." Lu Xing smirks and says, "Should I tell her that myself? How about that?" Yu laughs and replies, "That would be great, because then Ru will think you're just saying it out of jealousy, and let's see how she reacts." Ru returns and Lu Xing says nothing to her. She tells him they need to head to the set for an important meeting. During another interview, Zhao is asked what Ru had whispered to her on the first day of shooting, when she turned off her mic. Zhou remembers Rao saying that she had started liking Lu Xing again. Rao had confessed that while she initially found him annoying, she now sees how much he cares for her. Now, flashback to the school's 58th anniversary celebration. Ru is on stage, playing the piano. After her performance, Lu Xing presents her with a bouquet of flowers, and the audience applauds. Just then, a guy who had been bothering Ru repeatedly throws a bottle at her. Lu Xing immediately steps in to shield her. When the guy tries to run away, Lu Xing chases after him to confront him. Back in the present, Ru enters a room where Lu Xing is drinking. He invites her to sit and drink with him. As she sits down, he brings up Yu, who immediately jumps to Yu's defense, saying that he sometimes says harsh things but doesn't mean them. However, Lu Xing quickly clarifies that he's not talking about Yu's personality, he's talking about keeping his distance from her. He reminds her that their whole reason for doing this show was to generate publicity based on their past, so being seen alone with Yu might not sit well with viewers. Ru, unimpressed by the PR strategy, argues that she and Yu aren't doing anything wrong. After all, reality TV thrives on drama and she's just here for the ride, whether the audience likes it or not. Lu Xing then questions whether Yu really sees her as just a friend. Ru gets frustrated and accuses Lu Xing of trying to control her life again just like before. Lu Xing insists that's not the case. Rao, feeling exasperated, apologizes on Yu's behalf, which only angers Lu Xing further. He storms out, upset that she is apologizing on someone else's behalf. Meanwhile, Shu is frustrated with the cameraman, feeling like only 10 of his sentences are being used in the final cut. Shu then jokes, "Well, considering how much you talk, this was bound to happen." Finally, Shin and Ruby are informed that for the next date, they must have at least 100 sentences. The scene begins with a tense atmosphere. Ruby, who gets anxious just by hearing about a conversation, asks if their discussion will be counted. However, they are reassured that it won't be. Ru and Lu Xing are assigned to prepare a meal at the villa, where Ru comments that they grilled a meal last time and wonders if they have to do the same again. Min explains that the director and the audience loved the previous scene. However, this time, both Ru and Lu Xing are in a cold war with each other. Min checks on them and asks if they are okay, to which Ru responds that she is fine and suggests asking Lu Xing. Lu Xing, in turn, states that he is fine too, but sarcastically remarks that Rao is not likely to cooperate. Seeing their behavior, Min wonders what is wrong, while Zhao, noticing the tension, excitedly speculates that they might be arguing. Later, Zhu is seen on a date while practicing judo, and after some time, Shu arrives. She questions why he is late despite leaving before her. Their sentences are now being counted, and Shu explains that he had met a lady but refuses to disclose any details. Their argument escalates, and they soon exceed their scene's limit. A staff member arrives and instructs them to remain silent. When they are asked to deliver the last scene, Zhou wastes no time, lifting Shu and slamming him down, demanding to know if the woman was pretty. Shu admits she was, but he does not reveal her identity despite Zhou's persistent efforts. Eventually, Zhou runs out of sentences and the staff places tape over her mouth. Overwhelmed with emotions, she starts crying. And seeing her distress, Shu finally confesses that the woman was his mother, who wanted to know about their relationship and had instructed him not to tell Zhou. Hearing this, the staff tapes Shu's mouth as well. Moved by his words, Zhou hugs him, prompting Shu to call her his wife. The staff smiles at the moment, but Zhou quickly reminds him that they are divorced, making Shu correct himself to ex-wife. This reignites their argument once again. Meanwhile, Ruby prepares a memo to ensure she meets her daily target. She nervously memorizes it when Shin arrives. She starts talking to him using her memo, discussing topics like the weather and a Romeo movie, but she is uncomfortable. Shin then shows her a contract related to a legal matter involving his friend. During an interview, Shin mentions that his friend did not need him, but they had nothing else to talk about. Ruby, feeling most comfortable in work mode, chooses to engage in this discussion. She seriously reviews the contract, explaining its advantages and disadvantages, impressing the staff. After the scene ends, as the staff leaves, Ruby thanks Shin. He then asks if she has seen the Romeo movie, to which she responds that she could not get tickets. Shin offers to arrange them through a friend and invites her to go. Excited to complete her target, Ruby agrees, and they watch the movie together at a theater. While eating popcorn, their hands accidentally touch, making them both slightly nervous, but they smile and continue enjoying the film. Back at the villa, Ru approaches Lu Xing, saying they must work efficiently so that their personal issues do not affect the show. Lu Xing agrees and they begin meal preparation without showing any emotions. When Lu Xing asks Ru for ginger, she hands it to him coldly, making Ming urge them to act more naturally. Ru tells Lu Xing to do so, to which he replies that he is naturally like this, and reminds her that she once told him to think about himself while working. They stop talking again. Later, when Lu Xing asks for vinegar, Rao warns him that pouring it directly into the hot pan is not a good idea. Lu Xing dismisses her concern, saying he will manage, but as soon as he pours it, a fire breaks out. In a reflex, he pulls Ru back to safety, and they both ask each other if they are okay at the same time. Seeing this, Min remarks that concern will ultimately bring things back to normal. Zhao gets annoyed and asks if they are children for worrying over such a small issue. However, Rao and Lu Xing soon resume arguing. Rao reminds him that she had warned him, while Lu Xing retorts that they are unable to communicate effectively. Rao asserts that they are not compatible at all. Their argument is being watched live by the director and crew, who wonder what has gotten into them today. When they finally sit down to eat, they are asked to mention each other's shortcomings. Initially, both claim that there are none and that everything is fine. However, when pressed, Ru points out that Lu Xing always wants things done his way and expects everyone to follow his plan. In response, Lu Xing states that Ru cannot judge people properly and fails to see who is truly there for her. Ru protests against this discussion, but Zhao insists they elaborate. Lu Xing reluctantly says that since the others want to hear it, they must discuss it. Ru refuses, asking why they even need to. This frustrates Lu Xing, who angrily shouts that this is exactly why they broke up. Ru, equally frustrated, counters that their breakup was not because of her, and asks if he still does not understand the real reason. At this point, Ru recalls the incident when, after Lu Xing publicly proposed to her, she returned backstage and returned the ring. She explained that although she had accepted it in front of everyone, she could not keep it. Lu Xing, confused, asked why she had not discussed it with him before. Ru revealed that marriage was not an option for her due to the dark experiences she had witnessed in her family. She further disclosed that she was leaving for Germany. Lu Xing was upset and asked why she had not told him earlier. She admitted that she had not taken it seriously as her teacher had applied on her behalf, and she had only received the confirmation that day. She questioned whether they should be thinking about their future at that moment, which made Lu Xing walk away angrily. Later, on her graduation day, Lu Xing approached Ru and mentioned that his mother told him she really was moving to Germany. He apologized for his behavior that day, but expressed his belief that they could still maintain their relationship despite the distance. When Ru asked about their future, he said they would discuss it later, and they hugged. That same year, Lu Xing visited Rao in Germany, and they spent a great time together. Rao asked about his resort internship, and Lu Xing just shrugged it off. After some time when Rao is studying, she notices a message on Lu Xing's phone. It shows he should book a wedding venue soon, as it takes a year to reserve. Shocked, she does not say anything to him when he arrives. After a few years, Ru video calls Lu Xing and asks why he sent her a picture of a house. Lu Xing explains that his parents had sent him money, so he thought of buying a house for them. This makes Ru uncomfortable, but she shifts the conversation to work. When Lu Xing asks when she will return, Ru informs him that her teacher has offered her a chance to work with a famous director. Lu Xing is displeased by this. At that moment, he sees a boy passing behind Ru. She clarifies that his name is Yu and he is her roommate and that rooms are assigned randomly. Lu Xing does not like this, but remains silent. Lu Xing goes to surprise Ru in Germany. While at her place, he sees a girl and a guy hugging on the balcony. Assuming it is Ru, he becomes furious. When Ru opens the door, he pushes past her and attacks Yu. Another girl rushes in to stop him, but things escalate and Lu Xing is arrested by the police. Ru desperately explains that he is her boyfriend and that it was a misunderstanding, but the police do not listen. She sits there crying. The next day, when Lu Xing is released, Ru immediately hugs him and tells him how worried she was. However, realizing something, she steps back. Noticing her expression, Lu Xing apologizes, saying he misunderstood the situation and should have trusted her. He adds that as her boyfriend, he was not in a position to act on it. Ru, furious, confronts him about the house and wedding venue, reminding him that she had already told him she did not want marriage. Their argument intensifies. A call interrupts Ru, and after a brief conversation, she becomes sad and tells Lu Xing they should break up. Despite his protests, she walks away without looking back.